The Last Hope. The command center of the Solaric Confederation's last stronghold hummed with desperate energy. Admiral Zarek stood before the holographic display, his forearms gripping the console as his compound eyes reflected the grim statistics. Another system lost. 3 billion lives extinguished in mere hours. The void swarm had devoured yet another world. "How many ships remain in our fleet?" Zarek asked, his voice steady despite the weight crushing his spirit. First Officer Tella, her crystalline form dimming with fatigue, consulted her datapad. 17 capital ships, Admiral. 38 support vessels, less than 8% of our forces from the start of the war. A heavy silence fell over the command center. Once, the Solaric Confederation had spanned 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, a peaceful alliance of 17 sentient species. Now they had been pushed back to just 3 systems. Billions dead, countless worlds consumed by the insatiable hunger of the void swarm. A collective consciousness of nanomachines that converted all matter into more of itself. "The evacuation of the Krell system is complete," reported General Mox, his exoskeleton clicking as he approached the central table. "That leaves only Hestar Prime as our final evacuation point before." He didn't finish. They all knew what came next. Extinction. "The Council of Elders is requesting your presence." "Admiral," Tella said softly. "They've convened an emergency session." Zarek nodded gravely. The final stand of the Confederation would be decided today. The council chamber was austere, its once grand architecture now crowded with emergency equipment and tired officials. 21 beings, representing the remaining species of the Confederation, sat in a semicircle. Their faces showed the same grim acceptance Zarek had seen in his own reflection that morning. Elder Vox, the ancient gaseous entity who led the council, floated forward as Zarek entered. "Admiral, we have reviewed your latest projections. Even with all remaining ships defending Hestar Prime, we can hold back the swarm for 6 standard cycles at most." "That is correct, Elder," Zarek confirmed. "Then we must face the reality that the Solaric Confederation will fall." Vox's voice rippled through the chamber. "Unless..." The word hung in the air. Zarek felt a flicker of something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. "Unless what?" he prompted. Elder Neri, the small insectoid representative of the Trill species, stepped forward. Her antennae quivered with nervous energy. "The Archive Division has discovered something, Admiral. Something from the Forbidden Data Vaults." A murmur passed through the council. The Forbidden Vaults contain dangerous knowledge, records sealed away for the protection of all sentient life. "We found coordinates," Neri continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "and a transmission frequency. For a species thought to be myth or extinct." Zarek felt his heart rate increase. "Which species?" "Humans." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Zarek raised his hands for silence, his mind racing. Humans were legends, stories told to children. A species so dangerous, so unpredictable, that they had either been wiped out eons ago or had isolated themselves beyond the galactic rim. "That's impossible," General Mox protested. "Humans are myths." "No," Elder Vox corrected. "Humans were real. And according to our oldest records, they were formidable." Archivist Neri activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Ancient symbols scrolled across it, a language none had seen in millennia. "Our earliest records indicate that humans were part of galactic society approximately 8,000 years ago," she explained. "Then, following what our ancestors recorded only as the severance, they disappeared. Some accounts suggest they retreated beyond the galactic rim after a conflict with now extinct species." "And you believe they still exist?" Zarek asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "We found this," Neri replied, bringing up a new image, a simple set of coordinates and a string of code. It was hidden in a sealed data crystal, with instructions that it should only be accessed in the direst emergency, when the extinction of all was imminent. The chamber fell silent again, Everyone present understood their situation qualified. Elder Vox's form pulsed with intensity. We have debated this for 3 cycles. Admiral, the vote was not unanimous, but the majority believe we must try. If humans still exist, if they are even a fraction as powerful as legends claim, and if they're hostile, General Mox interjected. The old stories say they were unpredictable, violent. We're already facing extinction, Xerix said quietly. What do we have to lose? The transmission was sent from their most powerful long-range communicator, using protocols so ancient they had to be reconstructed from fragmented archives. For 3 agonizing days, there was nothing but silence. Xerix barely slept, dividing his time between organizing the final defense of Hestar Prime and checking for a response. The Void Swarm had already breached the outer detection grid of the system. They had perhaps 5 days before the first wave arrived. On the 4th day, as hope began to fade, every communication system in the Confederation's flagship simultaneously activated. Screens flickered, comm units buzzed, and a single voice, clear, calm, and utterly alien, spoke. Transmission received. Identify yourselves and state the nature of your emergency. The command center froze in collective shock. The voice was speaking in perfect modern standard, yet with an accent none had ever heard before. Xerix stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. This is Admiral Xerix of the Solaric Confederation. We are facing extinction from an entity we call the Void Swarm. Our civilization will fall within days without intervention. Are you human? A pause that felt eternal. Yes, we are human. Describe this Void Swarm. For the next hour, Xerix and his officers transmitted everything they knew about the swarm, its composition, behavior, the worlds it had consumed, their failed attempts to stop it. When they finished, there was another long silence. Then, we will assist, under 3 conditions. Xerix exchanged glances with the council members present. Name them. First, you will share all data on the Void Swarm's origin. Second, no Confederation vessel will interfere with our operations without explicit permission. Third, after this threat is neutralized, the Solaric Confederation will recognize human sovereignty over territories we designate. The terms were steep but straightforward. With extinction as the alternative, the Council took less than an hour to agree. We accept your conditions, Xerix transmitted. How soon can you arrive? The swarm will reach our final stronghold in less than 5 days. Prepare to receive our advance delegation in 18 hours. Coordinates follow. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 18 hours. General Mox finally sputtered. That's impossible. The coordinates they sent are at the edge of the system. Even with our fastest ships, it would take 3 days to reach that point. Apparently, Xerix said quietly, humans have faster ships. Preparations were made with frantic efficiency. A delegation was chosen. Xerix, 3 council elders, and key military and scientific personnel. Their fastest diplomatic vessel was prepared, though many doubted they could reach the designated coordinates in time. They need not have worried. 16 hours after the transmission, long-range sensors detected something approaching, not from outside the system, but from subspace itself. The readings made no sense. Whatever was coming wasn't using conventional FTL travel. It was somehow folding space around itself. We're being scanned, the sensor officer reported, her voice trembling. The energy readings are. I've never seen anything like this. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple. Then, with no further warning, they appeared. 3 vessels of impossible design, sleek, asymmetrical constructs that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. They were massive, each easily 10 times the size of the Confederation's largest dreadnought. By the ancestors, someone whispered. The ships moved with impossible precision, their maneuvers defying known physics. No visible propulsion, no energy emissions their sensors could categorize. They simply were. A new transmission came through. Confederation vessel, approached the designated coordinates. Come alone. As their ship moved toward the human vessels, Xerix felt a profound shift in his understanding of the universe. All his life, he had believed the Confederation represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Now, faced with these silent behemoths, he realized how limited that perspective had been. "Admiral," Tella said softly beside him, "do you think they can really help us?" Xerix stared at the alien ships. "I think, First Officer, that we're about to discover why humans became legend." Their small vessel was guided into a cavernous bay in the largest human ship. As the exterior doors sealed behind them, Xerix and his delegation prepared to meet the mysterious species they had summoned from beyond the galactic rim. What stepped out to greet them was nothing like the monsters of legend. The humans looked almost disappointingly ordinary, bipedal, symmetrical, with only minor variations in coloration and size. They wore simple gray uniforms with no visible weapons or insignia. But their eyes held something ancient and knowing that sent a chill through Xerix's exoskeleton. "Admiral Xerix," said the foremost human, extending a hand in what must have been a cultural greeting. "I am Director Helena Reyes of the Human Directorate. We've come a long way to meet you." Xerix hesitated, then reached out with his upper right hand to complete the gesture. "On behalf of the Solaric Confederation, I thank you for answering our call." The human's expression remained neutral. "Don't thank us yet, Admiral. First, show us what we're fighting." The awakening. The human delegation moved through the Confederation flagship with unsettling efficiency, absorbing information at a rate that left even the most brilliant Confederation scientists struggling to keep pace. They reviewed battle footage, examined void swarm samples, and studied defensive strategies with minimal commentary. Director Rice and her team spent hours in silent observation before finally gathering the Confederation leadership in the primary war room. The tension was palpable as the humans conferred among themselves in low voices, occasionally glancing at the assembled aliens. Finally, Rice addressed the room. "The entity you call the Void Swarm is a Class 4 autonomous weapons system," she stated matter-of-factly. "We've encountered similar technologies before." Admiral Xerix leaned forward. "You know what this is?" "Yes," Rice replied. "Self-replicating nanomechans with a hive intelligence. Designed for planetary colonization, repurposed for warfare, effective but fundamentally flawed. Elder Vox's gaseous form pulsed with agitation. Flawed? It has destroyed 12 major civilizations before reaching us. Consumed thousands of worlds." Reyes nodded. "Because none of you understood what you were fighting. You've been treating a technological infection with conventional warfare." She activated a holographic display, showing microscopic images of the Void Swarm's component nanites. With a gesture, she expanded the view to reveal internal structures invisible to Confederation scanning technology. "The swarm operates on quantum-paired communication protocols," she explained. "Each nanite is connected to every other, regardless of distance. Destroy one cluster, and the others adapt instantly. That's why your weapons became progressively less effective." General Mox clicked his mandibles in frustration. "Then how do we fight them?" For the first time, Reyes smiled slightly. "You don't. We do." She nodded to one of her team members, who activated another display showing the 3 human vessels. "Our ships carry specialized countermeasures designed specifically for threats like the swarm. We will deploy these at strategic points throughout your remaining territory." "What kind of countermeasures?" asked Chief Scientist Lyra, her tentacles curling with curiosity. "Quantum field disruptors," replied another human, a tall male with dark skin. "They generate an energy pattern that breaks the swarm's internal communication network. Without their hive mind, the nanites revert to basic programming, which we can then override." The explanation seemed impossibly simple after years of failed Confederation efforts. Elder Neri's antennae twitched skeptically. If such technology exists, why has no species in the galaxy developed it? Director Rey's expression hardened slightly. Because most species develop technology in reaction to threats. Humans anticipate them. A heavy silence fell over the room. Zarek studied the humans carefully. You speak as if you've been preparing for this specific threat. How is that possible? Reyes exchanged glances with her team before responding. It's time we clarified some historical misconceptions, Admiral. Humans didn't leave galactic society because we were primitive or defeated. We left because we saw what was coming. She activated a new historical display, showing a timeline that stretched back thousands of years, further than the Confederation's oldest records. Human civilization is approximately 50,000 years old, she continued. We achieved interstellar travel 30,000 years ago. For 10 millennia, we were part of galactic society, one species among many. The display showed ancient star maps, unfamiliar species, civilizations that predated the Confederation by eons. 20,000 years ago, we detected statistical anomalies in the rise and fall of galactic civilizations. After extensive research, we identified recurring patterns of technological development that inevitably led to extinction-level events. The Void Swarm is just one manifestation of these patterns. Elder Vox floated closer to the display. You're suggesting these threats are predictable, inevitable, Reyes corrected. Given certain technological paths, we presented our findings to the galactic community of the time, but were dismissed as paranoid. When we realized we couldn't convince others, we made a difficult decision. The severance, Zarek whispered, remembering the ancient term. Reyes nodded. We withdrew from galactic society, established territories beyond the rim, and focused on developing safeguards against the threats we predicted would emerge. We left beacons, like the one you activated, for civilizations that achieved sufficient technological advancement to find them. You've been watching us all this time, General Mox asked, his tone accusatory. Observing, another human clarified, waiting for the moment when intervention would be necessary, and accepted. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't disappeared in defeat. They had strategically withdrawn, developing in isolation while positioning themselves as silent guardians. Before anyone could respond further, alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral, called the communications officer. The Void Swarm has breached our inner defenses. They'll reach Hestar Prime within hours. Reyes didn't seem surprised. Then it's time. Admiral, recall all your ships to defensive positions around your evacuation centers. Our vessels will handle the swarm. Against thousands of swarm ships, Zarek protested, even with your technology. This isn't our first encounter with the swarm, Admiral, Reyes said quietly. Just your first time seeing us fight it. The battle that followed would forever change the Confederation's understanding of warfare. The 3 human vessels moved into position around Hestar Prime, forming an equilateral triangle in high orbit. No weapons were fired, no fighters launched. Instead, each ship emitted a pulsing field of energy, unlike anything Confederation sensors could categorize. As the Void Swarm approached, thousands of writhing, metallic masses that had consumed entire fleets, something unexpected happened. The swarm hesitated. For the first time in the long war, the relentless advance faltered. From the command center, Zarek and his officers watched in awe as the human vessels intensified their energy fields. The swarm ships began to disintegrate, not with explosions or destruction, but with a quiet unraveling. Nanites separated from their clusters, becoming inert, harmless particles floating in space. They're not destroying them, Chief Scientist Lyra observed with wonder. They're reprogramming them. Within hours, the entire Void Swarm attacking Hestar Prime had been neutralized. The human vessels then departed, moving at impossible speeds toward other systems where remnants of the swarm remained. Over the next 3 days, reports came in from across Confederation space. The swarm was retreating, disintegrating, disappearing. When Director Reyes returned to the Confederation flagship, she brought news that seemed miraculous. The Void Swarm has been neutralized throughout your territory. She reported to the assembled council. Our ships are tracking remaining clusters back to their point of origin to ensure complete containment. The council chamber erupted in celebration. Relief, joy, disbelief all mingling together. Xerix noticed that the humans did not join in the celebration, their expressions remaining measured and professional. When the initial euphoria subsided, Elder Vox addressed their saviors. The Solaric Confederation owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. As agreed, we recognize your sovereignty over any territories you claim. Reyes nodded in acknowledgement. We appreciate your cooperation. However, the Directorate has decided to modify our third condition. The room tensed slightly. What more could these godlike beings want? Instead of claiming territory, we propose integration, Reyes continued. The reestablishment of human diplomatic and scientific missions throughout Confederation space, with mutual exchange of knowledge and technology. Xerix could hardly believe what he was hearing. You would share your technology with us. Selectively, Reyes clarified. Technological development must be guided to avoid repeating past mistakes. What we offer is partnership, humans returning to galactic society not as conquerors, but as allies. And what do you gain from this arrangement? General Mox asked, still suspicious. For the first time, Reyes' professional demeanor softened. Isolation was necessary, but not preferred. Humans are explorers by nature. We've spent 20,000 years preparing for this moment, the point at which we could safely rejoin the galactic community. The implications were enormous. With human guidance, the Confederation could rebuild, expand, and develop in ways previously unimaginable. There is one additional matter, Reyes added, her tone growing more serious. Our analysis of the Void Swarm revealed something troubling. It wasn't a natural evolution of technology. Someone created it specifically to target sentient civilizations. A chill ran through the chamber. Elder Neri's voice trembled as she asked, "Are you suggesting there's another threat out there? Something worse than the swarm?" Reyes exchanged glances with her team. "We believe so. The Void Swarm was a tool, not the hand that wielded it. Finding that hand will require the combined efforts of humanity and the Confederation." As the Council processed this disturbing revelation, Xerix approached Director Reyes privately. "You knew this all along, didn't you? This was never just about saving us from the swarm." Reyes regarded him with those ancient, knowing eyes. The swarm was an immediate threat that needed to be addressed. But yes, we've been tracking something larger for centuries. Something that tests galactic civilizations, perhaps studies them, before wiping them out. And you need us to help fight it, Xerix concluded. Reyes shook her head. "Not just fight it, Admiral. Understand it. Different perspectives see different patterns. Humanity may have advanced technology, but the Confederation has diverse biologies, cultures, ways of thinking that we lack." She looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's viewport. "The greatest threats in the universe aren't overcome through dominance, Admiral. They're overcome through cooperation." As news spread throughout Confederation space of humanity's return and the swarm's defeat, a new era began. Human diplomatic missions were established on major worlds, bringing with them carefully measured technological assistance and cultural exchange. Rebuilding would take decades, but for the first time in generations, the people of the Solaric Confederation looked to the future with hope rather than dread. They had sent a desperate plea into the void, and the response had not just saved them, but transformed their understanding of the galaxy itself. In private quarters aboard the human flagship, Director Reyes reviewed the initial data from the neutralized swarm components. The quantum signatures matched others they had encountered throughout their long vigil beyond the rim, confirming their worst fears about what lurked in the darkness between galaxies. But for the first time in millennia, she felt something beyond determination. The Confederation species had shown resilience, adaptability, and potential that exceeded expectations. Perhaps in them, humanity had finally found the allies they needed for the greater war to come. Reyes closed the file and looked out at the stars, not with the weariness of a sentinel standing eternal guard, but with the cautious optimism of someone who had finally found companions for the journey ahead. The silent watchers had returned. The galaxy would never be the same again.